Hello everyone, this is Cardmates. If your goal in poker is to win, you need to build on your opponent's actions. Analyze your opponents, identify their mistakes, and then push them to make those mistakes again and again. Beginner poker players are often interested in how to play in a loose-aggressive style, which is also called LAG. Its advantage is that loose-aggressive poker players can win more than tight-aggressive poker players. These people think that a loose-aggressive style improves their game, which is why this is a very popular style. Pros in No Limit Holdem often act in a loose manner and achieve great success. But if you think that the key to winning is in a loose preflop, then this is not the case at all. No matter how strong a player you are, loosely playing bad hands preflop is almost always a concession. Adherents of the LAG style only reveal the mistakes of their opponents and thus outplay them. This usually happens after the flop. Strong poker players play a wide range of hands pre-flop in order to create situations in which their opponents will be wrong. Yes, they will flop a weak hand, but in the end, they will get a lot of different situations on the post-flop in which they will win. The key factors in this business are the mistakes of the opponents and the adjustments to these mistakes. If you notice a major mistake in your opponent's play, you can safely exploit it in a loose style. For example, you notice that a player at your table steals the blind very often. This is manifested in the fact that he constantly raises with any hand when he is in the bottom. If you call and check the flop, you will probably bet 100% of the time. If you bet first on the flop, he will immediately fold his weak hands. Remember that ABC lovers will rarely defend their blinds against a steal from an opponent. Such a player will most often fold pre-flop in this type of situation. But you can be even more effective against such a blind thief. You can safely call his bet on a wide range of hands. After you check raise the flop, your opponent folds, and this is a good operational setup against him. There is another way to exploit people who often steal the blinds on the bottom. On the flop, you can call with a tight aggressive range, but then, even if you miss the flop, still check raise. In this case, you will noticeably increase your win rate. It's important to understand that you are not playing many hands to enter the pot often. You are playing them to review your opponent's mistake. To exploit some bugs, you need a strong hand at the showdown. You can exploit less serious bugs with any hand. A loose play will increase your win rate if you can exploit your opponent's mistake not only with a strong hand, but with a wide range of almost any hand. There is no need to get hung up on defining the style in which you play. Do not forget that ABC is a pretty good strategy, and it works well, and you should not forcefully deviate from it towards another, like a regional one. Take the time to improve a specific pranks, analyze the mistakes of your opponent, and think about how you can use their mistakes. Then, start counteracting them over and over. You should not rush from one strategy to another very often. Improve what you already have and strive for the best poker. Yes, working on mistakes can be very routine, but how successful you become as a poker player depends on it. Find mistakes from your opponents and then exploit them. The more faces you find in your opponent's game, the more money you will earn from their mistakes. We will try to indicate the most common characteristics of low and medium limits. Also, today we'll talk about why certain players make similar mistakes and why they differ in these abilities. Using illustrative examples, we will prove why certain moves of poker players are errors, and it will be useful for you to learn how you can build your game for a full-fledged exploit. However, these are just examples, and poker is constantly evolving. Any mistake may be common now, but not relevant in the future. Memorizing these examples will not make you a world-class poker player, but you will learn from experience to develop your own strategies. There are many mathematical aspects of poker. In this game, Hiding information is very important. During the hand, you willingly give information about yourself. If you open from an early position, you're more likely to have pocket aces than a pair of 10 and 3. However, you will receive the last hand twice as often. This can be explained because with a 10 and 3, you will almost always fold, and with a pair of aces, you will raise. There is one way to hide information about your hand. You should always play in the same way. For example, if you go all in every hand, it will be difficult for your opponents to understand how strong your hand is. Unfortunately, this math is doomed to failure, as you will lose large amounts of money because you will often be weaker than your opponents. But the example is only for you to understand. Your job is to balance the massive information you give your opponents as you play. It is clear that you will risk a large amount of money only with monster hands. A betting line is considered unbalanced when your opponent is able to pinpoint your hand type and deviate from an optimal strategy to exploit this trend. Your line is balanced when the information is well encrypted and your opponent is forced to guess. Some poker players place great emphasis on balanced lines. They say they cannot bluff because they would never bet for value in a certain situation. In principle, this is the correct line of thought, but players try to play against those opponents who they are superior in strength in practice. Weak players will not be able to exploit your mistakes, while you will do exactly the opposite. This means that you should worry less about your plays and exploit the unbalanced line of your opponents. Why not to worry too much about unbalanced lines on your side? The thing is that at lower stakes, this will only make it harder for you to climb the stakes. Imagine watching a football match, the Champions League final, in which two of the strongest teams in Europe met this year. Surely, you would count on a battle of worth rivals, who treat each other with respect. At the beginning of the match, no one will rush headlong in the attack. The teams will test each other's defenses, and the game will be cautious, mostly in the middle field. The same thing will happen in poker, where opponents at the poker table use balanced line to study each other's play. Now let's imagine the situation where a very weak team will reach the final, and they will be opposed by a famous champion. This is unlikely to happen, but let's imagine if Barcelona and a small regional team from Brazil play in the final. Everything will end up quickly. The score will be devastating, and no one will look closely at each other. Few expectors would have understood Barcelona if they had started playing with all caution and without attacks. You also need to attack weak players in poker. Forget about balanced line and go on the attack. Thus, it would help if you thought about where your game is balanced and where it's not. But if you notice a mistake in your opponent's play, then you need to exploit it, regardless of whether your line is balanced or not. Basically, you will make more profit with an attacking style than with a cautious squeeze. Playing against tight players. Let's start with the tight style players, as they are the ones that the ABC poker will mistake against. The ABC strategy is designed to exploit the mistakes of those players who put money in the pot with weak hands. Tight poker players rarely play this way, so ABC players make mistakes in playing tactics against them. If you are going to make a lot of money with ABC poker, you are going to have a very hard time. Let's go with some examples. Feature 1. Fusing secured without the nuts. This feature is very common among poker players and is very easy to exploit. It's most often found among neat players. Poker players of this type will rarely go all in without a very strong hand. For example, an unpaired board with 3 cards to a flush, these players will only push with a nut flush. If they have a minor flush, they will either bet small or even check. However, pushing will force them to fold 2 pairs or a set without much anguish. If you fold when you don't have the nuts, you will often fold against the aggressor. This is because the nuts are rarely collected, and you cannot wait for the whole game. You will also be losing value a lot with strong but not nuts hands. These poker players often fold to large second barrels. For example, in an offline game, the blinds are $2 and $5, with 1,000 stack in no limit hold'em. You open up to $20. One of the players in position calls you, and the neat bets on the big blind. Flop comes as a queen of hearts, 10 and 4 of diamonds. Now you bet $40. One player goes down and the neat calls you. Based on his pre-flop and flop calls, we have the right to say that he has this following range. Pairs from 10 to queens, pair of fours, ace, queen suited, ace, 10 suited, king, queen suited, queen, jack suited, ace, something diamonds, king, jack diamonds, jack 9 diamonds, 9 8 diamonds, 6 5 diamonds, ace queen of suit, king queen of suit. In general, this is a very strong range, which clearly characterizes the play of a neat. The turn comes with a 4 of spades. He checks and you bet $100. So the question is, will the neat throw out his hands? These hands, he may throw them away. Pair of jacks, ace 10 suited, king queen suited, queen jack suited, ace something diamonds, except ace queen, 9 8 diamonds, 8 7 diamonds, king queen of suit. He will fold any hand weaker than ace queen and any non-combo draw. For players of this type, this folding range on the turn is quite similar, so he will continue only with these hands: pair of queens, pair of tens, pair of fours, ace queen suited, king jack of diamonds, jack 9 of diamonds, ace queen of diamonds, 7 6 of diamonds, 6 5 of diamonds, ace queen of diamonds. If you count the number of combinations, it turns out that your opponent will fold 34 combinations and continue with only 24 combinations. On the turn, you bet $100 to take the $140 pot, and the neat will fold over half of its range. Such a bet will bring you profit with any 2 cards in your hand. If the river had a diamond or a king, it would be a great bluffing opportunity. Of the 24 combinations that your opponent would call on the turn, half are ace, queen. Such players will feel extremely uncomfortable with only one pair, even with a queen as strong as an ace on the given board. Complex of adjustments. If you want to gain an advantage over an insecure player without the nuts, you need to do the following. First, open pre-flop more often. You can expect several situations in which you can take the pot, even if you made a big bet pre-flop. The more you inflame it, the more you win the pot. Second, place the second barrels more often. Tight and loose players differ from the rest only in that they can easily part with draws and top pairs on the turn than a normal player would do. Even if your opponent calls on the turn, you can still use your hide card profitable by bluffing. With deep stacks, you can overbet to get your opponents to pass a wide range of cards. Underwater rocks. First, you shouldn't call big bets against this type of player. They will have strong hands more often than regular poker players. They can go to showdown with strong top pairs more often, or they may not raise with the monsters on the opening street, saving them to the river. This is a good adjustment. So, if you assume that your opponent is capable of using it, you should slow down. Who has this feature? This feature is often inherent in poker players who play offline at small stakes. They are a little less common online. If your opponent's hands get to showdown can be knocked out of the turn, then at least 2 or 3 players at your table are definitely not playing well with the nuts. Complaints about the lack of active action at the table will become a direct sign-up. If you notice that someone checked before showdown with a strong hand, be sure to remember this feature. If your opponent checks with a strong hand, it can only mean that the poker player does not understand his hand's value, and that such players tend to act more loosely, making bad calls at showdown. If there is a player at your table who often folds but checks strong hands before the showdown, then we are facing precisely the type of player we're talking about. There is only one conclusion. You need to open more often on the preflop. Attack limpers in position with a wide range of suited hands, and then bet the flop. Bet second barrels on good turn cards. Also, do not forget to consider bluffing overbets on the river to exploit your opponent successfully. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video. See you guys, and if you have any question, please go to our website, cardmaids.net. Bye bye guys!